Boy, look at those Georgia Bulldogs struggling to keep all of their players in-house. And I think there's a difference between being Alabama and having a track record of producing NFL players. Georgia has one, but not nearly as long. So do they have the same leverage to say, hey, stay here, and you're definitely going to be in the NFL? Probably not as much of a history as Alabama. So let's dive into that. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Tennessee Cider Company, the original hard cider of the Smoky Mountains. Use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag with your cider order, available most anywhere in the United States of America. Now, for those of you that are busy, have lives, just keep up with the Vols. Let's get you updated with the players that are heading out of Athens to play their college football elsewhere. I have a list pulled up. Caleb, if you do as well, let's have you go through it, or I can. You decide.
You want to just go through the elite ones? Because there's a lot of people on this list.
There's 16 outgoing transfers, right?
Just
Correct.
do the ones that matter, Caleb. A lot of those guys weren't even playing.
Yeah. And by the way,
so,
Smoke Bowie is leaving. Smoke, the worst name for a cornerback of all time.
Smoke Bowie is leaving.
Yes.
I'm
mean,
sure
you beat
most
him.
Georgia Georgia
He had
fans
the
are
portal during the season.
suicidal over that. Oh no, not Smoke.
Most notably,
I mean, if you're a receiver, and you beat him once, smoked. That's all you got to say. You just got to say his first name.
Do you know anybody named Toast?
That's actually his middle name. Smoke Toast.
Smoke Toast.
All right, Caleb. What are the big boys there at the Georgia Bulldogs that are gone?
All right. So the most notable one recently is Jamin Dumas-Johnson, who was hurt towards the end of the year, but was probably their most productive linebacker until he got hurt, and he's out in the portal. I hear Tennessee's looking at him. I don't think Tennessee's going to get him. That's a pipe dream. But A.J. Harris, cornerback, Marvin Jones Jr., their edge, who just transferred to Florida State. I don't know why you're transferring to an ACC school. Haven't you just seen that the ACC is going to be completely shut out of everything in the near future? But
because they offered more money, probably. But
yeah,
do you remember, John? We used to say that, and it sounded so awful because it was a violation. Now you just say they probably offered more money.
Yeah, no, it's it was that was the case in the past too, but you just couldn't really say it. Who was the second guy you mentioned, Caleb, for Georgia after Dumas-Johnson?
A.J. Harris,
okay.
Marvin Jones Jr.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
And then a couple more, a few more. Xavier Sori, linebacker, Nyland Green, a cornerback who I was high on for a while, and Darius Smith. These guys are all still in the portal right now that I'm naming. The most notable one is from the portal, not recruits who have flipped, by the way, which is they did have a 5-star quarterback commit, just flipped to Nebraska, but Brock Vandergriff has transferred from Georgia to Kentucky. And if Kentucky can win with Will Levis, they certainly can win with Brock Vandergriff. So that could be something to watch out for.
Here's my take, guys. When you look at the outgoing guys, where are they going? Okay, they're Smoke still hasn't decided yet. But you have one going to Louisville, one going to Southern California. You have one going to Texas, one going to Alabama. That's Tresman Marshall. You have a couple going to Nebraska, a couple are going to Georgia Tech, so they still want to stay close to home.
Dave, move up. You're looking at the 2023. You're looking at last year.
Yeah. Okay. Give me destinations.
It's already out at Alabama. When you said that,
give me my destinations. My bad. Give me my destinations.
I thought he might have gone back to Georgia and then gone back to Alabama.
So most of these are still out in the portal. However, like I said, Marvin Jones Jr. is going to Florida State. Zeed Haynes is going to Syracuse. Again, if you're going to the ACC, I don't care about the money. You just saw with your own eyes how the ACC is going to get iced out of anything that matters in the future. So if you care about your future, you don't do that, even at Florida State. Ali Uba is going to Maryland. Alston Blasque is going to North Carolina. Jackson Meeks is going to Syracuse. CJ Madden is going to Purdue. And Jonathan Jefferson is going to SMU. Guys, the vast majority of these schools are either bad Big Ten schools or ACC schools. I mean, if you're going to either one of those, you're better off staying a backup in Georgia if you're thinking about your future. I mean, I keep insisting this. The ACC is going to be iced out. Florida State is on the verge of irrelevancy staying in that conference for the next 10 years.
Let me ask you this. Why would these guys leave? Because there's always more money. There's always more playing time. But there's also a big issue with traffic incidents in Athens. And there have been, a dozen issues of reckless driving. There's been one person that passed away. I can tell you this as a father, I would be very concerned about that. Do you think that plays into it at all, John, that maybe some parents are saying, I'd kind of like for you to head elsewhere?
Not at all. I don't think players leave because of something like that. A lot of players might be attracted to Georgia because thinking, man, those guys drive fast cars, and I like fast cars.
That's awful. John, it's
I-
awful.
I thought we were supposed to be
Ludacris
honest
is from
here,
Atlanta,
Dave.
and he's in all the Fast and Furious movies.
Thank you.
That's true. Ludacris is in Atlanta, and he's one of John's favorite rappers.
I think I don't think you put the numbers out there, and the numbers sound like people are just, jumping off the ship there at Georgia. I don't see it that way. I don't think Georgia is losing that much quality. I think Jamon Dumas Johnson is a really good player. He was a preseason All-American, but I don't think he was playing as good maybe as an All-American would at the start of the season before he was hurt. So I don't think the losses are that significant. I think Georgia will find more players, and I think Georgia would be a destination if they think they need a transfer. I think Georgia will have a good shot at getting it. But I think what happens sometimes is these schools, like you threw out Syracuse, I'll use that as an example. I don't know how much money NIL-wise at Syracuse spends. I can't imagine it would be a lot. But if it wants to attract a certain player, maybe put a lot into one player, it can do that. It might be willing to offer more to a second or third team SEC player than Georgia was. I mean, if you got so much money, technically there's no salary cap, but you don't have an unlimited supply. If you said, okay, we're going to lose, how much do we want to spend on this player to keep him? And Kirby just goes, maybe $10, something like that.
I sense that Alabama has the reputation that you stay there and you're going to develop into an NFL player. So if it's a matter of $50,000 or $100,000, if Alabama wants you, you should still stay there. I sense that Tennessee is in the position of rebuilding a program in which they've got to keep their players or have a massive transfer portal move like they did last year. I think what Georgia's trying to do is be somewhere in the middle. Run the guys that can't play, bring in the new guys, but still maintain the guys they like because they have enough of a history of providing the NFL with players. I mean, I think that the Eagles have 4 starters from Georgia. Guys, I think Kirby Smart is trying to play both sides. If it works, I don't know, John, but I think that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I think you have to be really strategic about this, and you can't be sentimental either. You might like a player and appreciate his contributions as meager as they could be, but you got to think big picture here. And we see that Georgia's recruiting, it's going to have one of the top, it's number one in recruiting right now because according to 24/7 Sports Composite, but it's always right there in the top 5 under Kirby. So there are new players coming in. I think he'll get some from the transfer portal. He added a couple of wide receivers last year who didn't really play great this year. But so overall, I mean, I wouldn't be that concerned if I were a Georgia fan. I wouldn't want to lose Dumas Johnson to the portal. But could he have gone in? I'm forgetting. Is he could he go to the NFL this year? Is this his third? No, I think it is his third. Like I was thinking he was like a redshirt sophomore, but I could be wrong on that.
I'm not sure actually.
But I'm just thinking.
Sorry.
Georgia just keeps bringing in these linebackers. And I think it's very similar to Alabama. And you mentioned the history Alabama has going for it, Dave. I think that's more significant to us than it is to players, because for a high school senior, he probably looks at his history as something that happened 3 years earlier. So I think for high school players, Georgia's been a dominant force for quite a while and is a good ticket to the NFL.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead, Caleb.
And this is I just want to say this is the other side of NIL that people didn't want to admit in the transfer portal. They thought that NIL and transfer portal was all about player welfare. And one of the warnings, and this is a feather in the cap for people who are who are anti-NIL and anti-open transfer portal, they didn't realize that most of the players are going to be victimized by this, because most of the players who may have a chance to develop in a program are going to be nudged into the portal if they don't show anything within a year. And that's happening more often than players, using it to their advantage. That's why somebody like Dabo Swinney is falling behind, because whatever you think of Dabo Swinney and his anti-NIL stance, he's consistent. He's very much against not honoring scholarships when he has a player there. And that's actually done him in as much as anything. But you kind of have to respect don't you somewhat have to respect the principle of him doing that? That he says, I offered the guy, I'm going to honor the scholarship.
Yeah, I also, on the flip side, think that these contracts, these NIL contracts to prospects should be paid. Let's take Nico's, for instance, which I've been told is 4 years at $2 million. I think that should be backloaded. I think that it should be, let's say, $500,000 the first year, $150,000 the second year, $2 million the third year, and $4 million or whatever would add up to be 8 total. But you try to get him to stay for that fourth year. And I don't know if Georgia is doing that, but I think a lot of these guys are getting their money, John, on the front end, and they're like, I've done my duty. I'm out of here.
Time for a new deal. And let's not forget that the NCAA was emphatic in noting that the NIL deals were not designed as a recruiting inducement. They really thought that one through.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Not a recruiting inducement? John, are you sure?
I think it's interesting that Georgia's had pretty good success with keeping guys, I think, in a way. Look at the quarterbacks. Carson Beck could have left sooner. Brock Vandegrift could have left sooner than he did. You still got Gunnar Stockton in there, who I think was at least a 4-star, maybe a 5-star recruit. I mean, they seem to stick around there. I don't know if Georgia's paying its guys to stay or people just love Athens, Georgia. So I still like Georgia's chances to be very successful overall.